live. This is Law Call.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Law Call, where we're going to take your questions live tonight on air. Give us a call, 850-392-1544. If you're a little shy and you don't want to go online or go on air, you can go online. You can email us at lawcall@WMBB.com. We're talking to you live on Facebook, live at WMBB, live at WDHN. We are here on Memorial Day weekend, and we've got a special guest in the house tonight. We've got Mr. Ted Howell.
That's right.
Ted is with our law firm as well, and he has been with us for a number of years. He works in the area of automobile accident cases, slip and trip and fall cases, business cases. You know, the show tonight's about automobile and truck accident cases, but we're going to open the line up. If you've got a question about any legal matter in kind of these realms, you can give us a call. We'll try our best to give you an appropriate response. Ted, what have you been doing with your family over the weekend?
Well, we've been over in Mexico Beach, had to pull out to come in here and make sure we could take care of all of Bay County and southeast Alabama, wherever we need to be. We'll be ready to do any answers to any questions that anybody might have.
Now, Ted, you're also licensed in Alabama, correct?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about your background. It's been a little while since we've kind of reintroduced you, so go ahead and reintroduce yourself.
Well, I'm born and raised in Jackson County, went to the University of Florida after high school, graduating from Mariana. Got my undergraduate degree in engineering, and then decided to stay in Gainesville for another 3 years and get my law degree. Started off practicing briefly in Mobile, Alabama, and then got pulled back here to Bay County, and have been here ever since. Don't have any plans of ever leaving.
I know, and we don't ever want you to leave either. We're going to put the golden handcuffs on you and make sure you stay around for a long time. Ted, you know, some of the things about car and truck accident cases here in the area, we've probably got some folks that are listening, watching the show, flipping through the channels going, what is this show about? Tell us a little bit about some of the differences between Alabama law and Florida law. Well, and I'll kind of fill in on the Georgia side as well, but
absolutely.
You go right ahead.
Well, in the past there's been a lot of differences. We're getting a little more similar now with some of the more recent tort reform, but for example, and some of the questions I think we may have here tonight, you know, in Florida, it's important to remember, as the owner of a vehicle, you are just as liable as the person driving the vehicle. That's something we call the dangerous instrumentality doctrine that is fairly unique to Florida. In Alabama, as the owner of a vehicle, you are only typically going to be liable for an accident if you negligently entrusted that vehicle to someone. So it's important, very important here in Florida. I know we've talked about this between us a lot of times. Once your child becomes of age, it's something you should consider titling that vehicle in their name alone. It's also something to consider with spouses, because if your name is on that vehicle, you are just as responsible as anyone that's driving it for you, as long as they have your permission. Now, there's exceptions, obviously, if they stole the vehicle or something of that nature. In the past, we've had differing statute of limitations between Florida and Alabama for negligence, which would include automobile accident cases. Now those are both 2-year statute of limitations you are looking at. Historically, Florida has followed pure comparative fault, meaning if someone is responsible for the accident in any degree, even if it's only 1%, you are able to recover. However, with the recent changes in Florida, now we follow a form of negligence called modified comparative fault. So we need to establish that the person that we are seeking to pursue a claim against is at least 50% or more at fault, or we will be barred from recovery.
And barred from recovery means you don't get any money at all.
Nothing whatsoever.
But in Alabama?
In Alabama,
Alabama
follows the opposite of pure comparative fault and follows what we call a contributory negligence theory of the law, where if you can establish any fault on the part of the person pursuing the claim, then you are barred and not allowed to recover. Now, that's what the rule is on the books. It may not always work out that way in practice, and there's exceptions to that, but that is the technical rule of law that you're faced with in Alabama. I believe in Georgia they follow something very closer to the modified comparative fault.
Modified comparative, that's correct. So there you go. Very well. I mean, so you got your brief understanding of automobile accident law.
Yep.
We're here. We'll take your questions live, 850-392-1544. Email us at lawcall@WMBB.com. We've got an email already, so let's go to that. Let's take a look at it. Oh my gosh, it's so far away. I need to go to the paper here. My daughter let her boyfriend drive her car, and they were in a wreck. does his insurance cover this, or will mine be on the line? JJ.
Well, JJ was just reading our mind.
He was, and we don't know where JJ is, so let's go ahead and take it as if it's a Florida case, and then let's discuss it if it's an Alabama case.
As we just referenced, if it was in Florida, actually both of the insurances are going to be in play. Typically, the owner's policy is going to be the primary policy, and the next will be excess, but both parties have liability, and both policies will potentially be in play for any claim. Take that in Alabama, it's going to primarily just be the driver's insurance at that point in time. There could be some exceptions. For example, if we knew you had handed the keys to this gentleman and he was intoxicated, that would be an example of a claim for negligently entrusting that vehicle to that person. There could be exceptions.
Or if you knew that the boyfriend was reckless and
had a lot of accidents and a lot of issues. So something where it was failure to use reasonable care in allowing that person to use your vehicle. But typically you're just going to be looking at the driver's policy there in Alabama. But that's why it's always important to make sure not only yourself has coverage, but anyone that you're using allowing to use your vehicle has adequate coverage.
You know, in the opening you mentioned just a few moments ago about what do you do, you said when a child becomes of age to put them on the title or title the vehicle in their name. Why is that important, and what are some of the ramifications of doing that? And explain that process, what we're talking about. We're not talking about giving them the car.
No, and look, as a minor, you're not allowed to contract legally in the state of Florida up to the age of 18, and Alabama is actually up to the age of 19. And so you cannot legally own a vehicle. And as a result, you're going to have a parent or other of-age individual that is going to hold that actual title. And under those circumstances, that person is going to be just as liable in Florida for any accident that minor causes while they are driving that vehicle. However, once they become of legal age, whether that's 18 here in Florida or 19 in Alabama, it's something that you need to consider putting that title solely in that person's name so that that other person is not carrying on that potential liability of the person that's driving around and someone that they potentially maybe give permission to use the vehicle, and then you're on the hook for it as well. So it's something that has to be considered. Obviously, there are potential, there's pros and cons to anything you do in life. So once that vehicle is titled solely in their name, they are legally allowed to transfer, and they could do that.
But as a parent,
yes,
you can add yourself on there as a lien holder to the vehicle.
You can. There's various tricks of the trade that you can do.
You do that so that the child can't run out to the cash and play or whatever it is, and go take a $1,000 loan out at a payday loan or something like that.
Or do the Fast and Furious and bet their car title on the race.
You Mariana boys got in trouble.
You never know what my...
How many times did you swap pink slips with somebody?
No, well, look, I was happy to have something that ran and got me from point A to point B. I was just telling my kids some stories about that. My first vehicle would not go into reverse unless it was warmed up substantially. You had to open the door and kick out and push it backwards. I mean, it's just, different times.
We've all been there.
Yes.
We've all had that.
Yes.
We do that. So we're taking your questions live. If you wish to call in, 850-392-1544, or you can email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. One of the other pros and cons that need to be taken into that, though, is also you need to talk with your insurance agent.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's something, an insurance agent can only deal with the facts that they know and the playing field that is explained to them. It's important for you to have an educated discussion with them about what are your exposures, what are you doing, where are you traveling, how often are you using your vehicle, what assets are you looking to protect. They need to know these figures so that they can, and information so that they can assess what is the appropriate amount of coverages. Do you need potentially an umbrella policy that stacks over your base coverage in order to make sure that things are protected so that you do not end up in a situation where you are exposed? Because a lot of people are under the false assumption that if they're in an accident, their insurance is going to cover whatever it takes. That just simply isn't the case. You buy, per contract, a certain amount of coverage, and they will pay up to that amount in order to try to resolve the claim for you. But if you hurt somebody seriously and you don't have enough coverage, and you're sitting with a couple of unencumbered beach lots, vacant property, lake house, you name it, that's up for grabs potentially in a case.
Right. So insurance is there to protect your assets.
Yes.
I'll say it that way, be polite on the weekend here, but it's there to protect your assets, and you need to make sure that you have adequate coverage. And that's why we always encourage people to go to a local agent. You can do things online, but you can point and click your way into a problem.
Oh, yes.
And so you want to make sure that you're actually on the line or talking with a live person, a live insurance agent, not just a customer service person. We've got another email question that we can take here. Let's go to that real quick. Let's see here. So I just put in a new engine in my car last month. Since then, I was in a wreck and the car was totaled. Insurance only wants to pay my car's Blue Book value, which is less than what I paid for the engine. Oh my gosh. Can I fight this? And this is Kenny. And Kenny, I think the answer is going to be, well, I'll let you take the answer here.
Possibly.
Possibly.
I mean, the typical, and this is a difficult conversation, Larry, that we have very frequently, and just unfortunately, the measure of damages when you lose your vehicle in an accident is not what it costs you to replace that vehicle. It's what the value of that vehicle was at the date and time of the loss, whatever that may be, depending on how many miles the vehicle is, what kind of how you've maintained it, and things of that nature. An exception to that is if you've made recent upgrades to the vehicle,
right,
some additions. And so this is one of those scenarios where you're going to be able to argue that. Now, are you going to be able to get the full value of that engine you put in there? That may be difficult, but it's definitely something that you need to seek out representation in order to assist you with that, because this is not your standard look at it in a Blue Book and you're going to get whatever, a table, and you're going to figure it out.
He mentions the Blue Book. What is the Blue Book?
The Blue Book is something they use in the industry. Very typically we hear the Kelly Blue Book, and there's some new, more recent ones that I've heard of that are being used, because it's, as we all know, used car values are skyrocketing now.
Right,
we're still in that scenario where Kelly Blue Book is not always keeping up with that used sales.
You got the NADA Southeastern guides in our area. You got
Right.
Edmunds. There's a whole variety of them, and of course your guy at the local car lot,
right,
who is going to swap out or trade your vehicle. They'll be able to give you an estimate as well.
Right.
Something to give you some evidence to go with there. Well, I think we're bumping up against a break, Ted.
Yep.
Let's take that break. We're still going to be here. The phone lines are going to be open during the break. 850-392-1544, or as the emails have come in, lawcall@WMBB.com. Either way, we'll be here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back in just a few moments. And welcome back to tonight's edition of Law Call Memorial Day weekend. Of course, we want to thank all of you who have served, and for those who have sacrificed, we want to honor and remember you.
Right.
You know, we've got a lot of folks that work with us. Gary Starr is one of our veterans that work for us. He's watching tonight and working, he says. He's actually helping a client who's come in from out of town. But Gary, we appreciate your service and thank you for everything. Donna Barton's family, she's got one of her sons is working in the United States Air Force right now. We appreciate all that he's doing. And in the past, we've had paralegals who have served. We had Dolores Coleman.
Dolores Coleman.
Yep, she served. Donna Crisco served.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yes, Donna Crisco was in there as well. And Savannah Delgado, she was a paralegal that also worked with us, and she has done that. But we appreciate your service. We thank you so very much for all you're doing. And you know, this is a time of remembrance. That's what it's here for with the weekend. And we need to remember that, you know, who was there, who's made the ultimate sacrifice for us. And without them, we couldn't do what we do. We couldn't be free. And, you know, words alone just can't express the gratitude that we have for them. We do have another email question. Let's go to that real fast. I was in a wreck with a woman who had been drinking and driving. She had been drinking at an event sponsored by her employer. Does the company have any fault for her dangerous driving? Tanya, wow.
Yes, that's a
first of all, I'm very
situation.
sorry. That's a bad situation. And of course, with Memorial Day weekend, we want to make sure that, you know, if you're out there, the new Mothers Against Drunk Driving slogan is decide to do what? Decide to take a taxi, take a cab.
Right, and
decide to ride.
It's never been easier than it is in today's world with Uber, Lyft, all the different ride-share programs. It's just not worth it. And Larry, what's it going to cost you if you get a DUI?
We'll talk about that as we talk about this case right here for Tanya. But,
absolutely.
Decide to ride, which means you know, take it if you've been drinking. You know, one drink is one too many. You need to make sure that you get a, you know, either a designated driver, ride share, Lyft. Just have to put that out there as we do this tonight. But let's talk about Tanya's case here. Yeah. She was in a wreck. A woman hit her who had been drinking at an employer-sponsored function. Take it away, Mr. Howell.
Yeah,
You've got a similar case going on right now.
We've dealt with these, unfortunately, more than I would like to. But as we mentioned earlier, in any accident, you're always looking at the owner of the vehicle and the driver. So clearly those are two that would, we know at least we have a driver here. The third category we're always looking is, were you in the scope and course of any employment for someone at the time? And a subcategory of that, was there, when you have a drinking situation, is there some way that they got that intoxicating alcohol or substance or whatever that may pose a liability issue? And here we kind of have both of those kind of interrelated trickling in. So when you have a employed event and you're serving alcohol and you know that they had to drive to get there, that's a failure to use reasonable care under the circumstances, and you are going to have an issue where that employer is going to have culpability, and that is going to be a serious problem not only for that individual that caused the accident, that's now not only going to be facing criminal charges, but also a civil case that can implicate punitive damages.
Right.
And those are not, I mean, in a typical case that Larry and I are dealing with, we're talking about trying to get compensation for the person, to try to make them whole and get to the position they were before the accident. When you get in a situation where you're looking at something that is quasi-criminal, in this case actually criminal, it's not just negligent, it is gross negligence, intentional conduct. You are then in a realm where we can seek to have them punished for what they do, and that means punitive damages. And those have grave consequences, because not only are they not potentially not covered by your insurance policy, leaving you bare on that aspect of the claim, but it's something that is not going to be dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Right. Also in Alabama, you can plead, it's different. You can plead punitive damages directly. And
is covered by your insurance policy. And see, what Larry mentioned about the pleading, in Florida, I cannot file a complaint against somebody out of the gate and seek punitive damages immediately. Because punitive damages have such dire consequences, part of the tort reform that we've had in prior years require us to have an evidentiary basis before we can even go after them.
Right.
So we have to do what's called a proffer, showing that we have a good foundation. The one we most typically deal with is drunk driving, but we've had assault and battery cases and other intentional torts where we still have to do it, but we have to show that there is a good faith basis, that we are going to have a conduct that rises above just general negligence. And then we can ultimately, the judge is the gatekeeper on that and decides if we've met that threshold. And if we have, we're allowed to plead those punitive damages. And at that point in time, we get to look at everything from a financial aspect.
Yeah, we get financials.
And so normally in a case, I can't look at where your bank accounts are, what you have, and I can look at what I can get public record-wise, but I can't force you to turn over your financial information until and unless I have a judgment against you that I'm trying to collect on. But if it's a punitive claim, we can do that.
Yeah. We've got a caller on the line. I think it's Gail. Gail, how can we help you tonight?
Hi. I, several years ago, put my son's name on the car title of my car because I wanted him to have easy access to it should I pass away. He is now 35 years old. In the interim, he has taken that vehicle, taken possession of it, and I have another vehicle. And he just recently bought a new vehicle and transferred that title that had both our names on it, or that tag, to the new vehicle. He's 35 years old now. It's time for him to not have Mama on his tag. And I want to know, can I go to the local tag office and request that my name be taken off of that tag for the purposes of being also on the title?
Yes, ma'am. You can do that, and your son needs to be there with you,
right.
And you just go down to the local tag office, and they'll take care of that for you. Because you're on the tag, though.
Well, technically, depending on if it's an or or and, she may be able to do it by herself.
Right.
It's best, though, to do it with both so that it's clean and there's no doubt. But Gail, you absolutely do not want to be on that title for the reasons we've already discussed, and that sounds like that vehicle's
right.
in sole possession and control of your son anyway, and it's just, honestly, it could be having other effects on you as far as your insurance rates and things because of the risk pool that you're out there. So there's a lot of different reasons that you want to go ahead and have that taken care of sooner rather than later. So thank you for calling and pointing that out.
And Gail, if there's an issue as far as, let's say there's something wrong with your son, he's got a dire illness or something like that he feels like you do that, then again, the appropriate way to do that is put you on as a lien holder.
Right.
And that way, that's another way to do it. But Gail, thank you for your call, and we're going to take our final break tonight on a Memorial Day weekend. Stay tuned. We'll be right back in just a few moments. And welcome back to the final segment here of Law Call Memorial Day weekend 2023. We got 2 email questions during the break. One having to do with, can you sue the driver of a Lyft? Yeah, well, there it is. Let's see, how does Lyft and Uber drivers deal with an accident in their vehicles? Can the Lyft and Uber driver be sued by the passengers if an accident might happen? Just curious. Well,
like any accident, if that driver is at fault,
right?
Yes, and Uber and Lyft carry separate policies, separate, distinct. Now, one thing that's important for a lot of our Uber and Lyft drivers, they may not understand that their personal policy is very likely not going to cover them if they have not disclosed to their insurance company that they are driving for a rideshare company. Because
well, there's an exclusion in there typically because it's for a business purpose.
Right.
And so if you're doing it for business purpose, there's almost a unilateral exclusion in every insurance policy.
Right.
We say almost because it's not 100%.
You got to look, but yes.
Let's go to the next email question having to do with auto insurance. I tell you what, let's put the email question down. We're going to paraphrase it real fast.
Yes.
Let's take the email question down. Go ahead.
Well, coverages are going to have a per person limit and a gross limit for the whole accident, because they're not going to be a per person indefinitely, because you could hit a school bus. We've had several of those cases like that. And it's not going to be a magic number of always times 3. It could be times 2. It could be combined single limits, whatever. The situation we're talking about here is for bodily injury coverage. If it's 100, 300 as that example, that would mean there's the most any one person could get is $100,000 if they're injured by that person, and the most that policy is going to pay out is 300. So if there were 3 people, each one could potentially get 100 per person. If there's 5, the most any one can get is 100, but they're going to have to divvy up that remaining 200. So it just depends.
That's right. So there you go. Hope that answered your question in quick order. If not, you can give us a call at our office. We'll be more than happy to address this with you. Give you some questions also to ask your insurance agent to go over, especially, we didn't cover this tonight, uninsured motorist coverage.
Right.
But we'll do that another time. Actually, we probably need to have a full segment on uninsured motorist coverage. We've got some shout outs tonight that we'd like to show up here. If we get those real quick. First of all,
look at there.
That's me and my wife and my daughter and future son-in-law. We were out taking a family vacation out in Napa. And
Larry Perry doesn't take vacations.
We got to relax a little bit. Oh, I was working. I was working that day. And, of course, the reason why, there's graduation.
That's awesome.
Daughter graduated from Vanderbilt School of Law. She has taken a position with a law firm up in Atlanta. Typically, I don't get this personal with everything. It's all about me tonight.
That's right.
Let's go to the next one real fast.
That's okay.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, we had the one with Johnny Joe Bear.
Oh, did Johnny get left off?
Johnny got left off. Sorry about that, Johnny. We love you. And yes, if we had an automobile accident in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you are our one and only call, not just our first call as well. You and your lovely bride, Amy, we enjoyed dinner with you tonight. Got to meet all the children. Sorry that picture didn't make it on, but I don't know why. I want to say shout out to Elizabeth and Sarah Kate coming in from Birmingham, Alabama. We got Miss Pam. We got Gary, who is working and actually watching as well. We got Johnny and Amy, of course, Joe Bear. We got the Mays from Gadsden County. We got Miss Pam. We got my Pam, and we got Hank that are watching the show tonight. And of course, the Buck is watching.
Always watching. I better get these in real quickly. My son, Judson Howell, actually stayed up since he's now out of school.
Okay.
Yeah, he wanted to call in, but he couldn't figure out how to do it. And then my cousin, Brooke Cummings, is with him as well. Hey, Brooke, hope y'all are having fun this weekend.
So, folks, be safe out there. Drive carefully. Remember, don't drink and drive. If you decide to drink, decide to ride.
Absolutely.
Folks, y'all have a good evening. We will be back here next week, next Sunday, same time, same place, same stations. Same Facebook Live. We will be back next week. Y'all have a good evening.